I'm sitting in a car because I have decamped New York to my friends in Connecticut, and there is a leaf blower next door. It's raining, and there's a violin lesson inside. So I decided to step out of all that and come out to the car where it's quiet. And you were kind enough to send me a bottle that has not arrived here yet, but I got some Chateauguay and some salt and vinegar potato chips in the car to taste with you. So once we get video, once I can see you, we can toast together. No, I think I lost you. Oh, Jasmine, oh shoot. She disappeared. Okay. Well, live and learn. Oh, there you are. There you are.
I think it knocked me off again. I'm so sorry. This is definitely my fault, Jeff. The internet up here is...
Don't worry about it. Listen, I'm in a car. It's completely fine. I can see you now. Everything's fine. I think we're good.
Okay, well, if we keep getting knocked off, we'll reschedule.
Yes, okay. So did you hear me
pairing.
explain? Did you hear me explain why I'm in the car? Okay.
Yeah,
so
I love your
and thank you for the pairing.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, go ahead.
I keep this in the refrigerator, and I'm actually next Thursday talking with Luke Planty, who is one of the owner managers he runs Chateauguay. So I'm excited for that.
Very cool.
Anyways, more about you now. So let's tell everybody who I learned something today. I'm supposed to tell you why, or tell people why I think you're interesting. And I just think you make fantastic wine. I learned about you with the In Pursuit of Balance, and just make great wine and a great personality. And I'm happy to reconnect over this. So that's why I'm doing this with you, or why I wanted you on here. But can you tell people who you are?
Yeah. So hi. And I just want to say, Jeff, thank you so much for supporting our wines. And I'm really,
it's my pleasure.
I'm so happy to be talking with you today, because I don't think we've actually ever met in person. So here we go. Brought together by COVID.
Pleasure.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm the general manager of Hirsch Winery. I actually took over the winemaking last year, so I'm a first-time winemaker. I have been working mostly in the vineyards during harvest, and really kind of working all the way through the growing season up until the fruit was delivered to the winery, and then kind of, stepping aside, and the winemaker would take over from there. But our winemaker left after the 2018 harvest. And so I decided, after a lot of thought, to hire Michael Cruz to be my winemaking consultant and to take over the winemaking myself. So I hired a consultant because there's a lot of things that I don't know how to do, on the, especially on the technical side, and just things like sanitation and enology. So super important to have that support. And I hired a whole new cellar crew. We have an awesome cellar team now. We always have, but new cellar team. And yeah, so I've just basically extended that. I just made my harvest like 6 weeks longer because couldn't get enough harvest. So now, I bring the grapes into the winery and we try to make wine out of them. So I have one vintage under my belt. It left me with more questions than answers. And I'm still running the winery, doing a lot of the sales, at least trying to sell wine right now. It's a little hard, some new challenges, but yeah, that's me. And I'm second generation. My dad started the vineyard in 1980, and then grew grapes for 20 years and decided to start making his own wines in 2002. And so that's what we are. We're an estate vineyard and winery on the Sonoma coast.
Can you explain what that's like? Because I think that you often don't, you talk to the winemaker whose name is on the label, and it's unusual to be able to talk to the people who you have a history of growing grapes for other people. Can you just talk a little bit about that business, and then how you changed into making the wine yourselves?
So I think that one of the most important conversations that we don't have enough, or at least we don't have on like a really serious, honest level in this industry, is about growers. And, since it's COVID-19 protocol and there are no rules, I will talk some shit here and say that there's a lot of wineries, small wineries that we all, respect or think we should respect, that put out marketing materials that say that they farm vineyards even when they don't own the vineyards. And it's nonsense. I mean, we farming a vineyard means farming it year round and doing all the unglamorous stuff as well as the so-called, you know, glamorous, like final stuff. And farming a vineyard means doing the work, you know. It's so, I just think that, you know, we have to be really mindful when we see that in marketing material. It is, the other thing I'll say too is people who own land and vineyards tend to be pretty protective about what's done in their vineyards. And so, you know, I know from friends who own vineyards that mostly sell fruit that, you know, the relationship between the grower and the winemaker is not this like perfectly harmonious thing. So it's, you know, I think the thing that I guess what I'm trying to say is like, you know, we live on this vineyard. My father planted every single vine together with our vineyard manager, who's been with us for 30 years, more than 30 years now, Everardo Robledo. And so he and Everardo, you know, they know every vine, like literally every vine and every little nook and cranny. And you know, before my dad had his accident in 2014, he was in the vineyard 6 days a week. Everardo's in the vineyard 6 days a week. And, you know, that's a very different relationship with a vineyard than, you know, visiting it, you know, once a month outside of the main growing season, and maybe even once a week. It's just a completely different thing. So anyways, for us, there's such a deep and intimate relationship with the vineyard. And I think that's one of the things that's so confusing to me making the wines this year, is just trying to like I know the vineyards, I know them from being in the vineyard, like what they look like and how they respond to inputs and and where the little inconsistencies are. And then I know what the wines, you know, what kind of wines they make, but then trying to find that exact through line. Why does a wine taste the way it does? Why does a vineyard make the kind of wine that it does? And how much is winemaking and how much is vineyard is really complicated, because, you know, we only get to do it once a year, and every year so many of the factors are different. So so it's really fascinating, and it's deeply complex, and requires so much intimacy with the vineyard and so much time with the vineyard, that, you know, I just think it's the single greatest asset that we have, but also the greatest liability, right? Because you only have so much time in so many years. And, you know, in regards to selling fruit, which is, you know, we still sell fruit to this day, and we love our fruit customers. I mean, the relationship that we have with Byron Kasugi and Ted Lemon and Aaron Jordan, and, you know, it's like this really extraordinary, in the case of Ted and Aaron, like 20-year relationship. Wow. And they buy fruit from the same parcels every year, so they develop some of that same intimacy with the vineyards. And, you know, Aaron is a little bit more hands off. You know, he basically is like, you know, your dad knows what he's doing, like whatever he thinks is fine. And with Ted, it's he's deeply hands on, and so we're actually testing out a new trellising system for Literai this year, that I think we would only attempt, you know, with a customer like that, with somebody who we really trust, we respect him as a grower, and so on.
Yeah, it's fascinating because usually, you know, it's an estate and there's somebody who's the vineyard manager and somebody who's the winemaker. And I'm fascinated by, you know, what does the winemaker do when he goes out to the vineyard, and who's in charge and who is the final say so. And it's always a back and forth. So now that
we fight a
growing
lot.
wine and you're
we do
good.
Fight.
Well, that's good.
The vineyard and the winery, we get into fights. But
so has your appreciation of the vineyard management changed now that you're on the final end of it?
Well,
or just a deeper understanding?
My dad used to really, my dad, like I said, he was in the vineyard 6 days a week before his accident. And so his accident was in May of 2014. And, you know, he went from being 100% to zero, and he didn't come back to work full time until 2016. So I took over, you know, I do not want to pretend that I know even one iota of what he knows about farming, but I took over a lot of his responsibilities in 14 and 15 in the vineyard, basically vis-a-vis all of our fruit customers. And remember, our biggest fruit customer is our own winery, right? So I was also like, I was liaising between the winery and the vineyard starting in 2014. And then even when my father came back in 2016, he does have some health limitations. So he's very active in the vineyards, and he's very active, particularly with the biodynamics and soil health. But as we get closer to harvest, it becomes a 24/7 job. And my dad, God bless him, you know, he saw that he wasn't going to be able to participate at the 24/7 level during harvest, and he actually stepped back and said to us in 2016, to me and Everardo, he said, okay, I'm stepping back, you guys can make all the decisions. And it was a huge help to us, because you can only be at the table during harvest if you can be at the table every single day. You know, I think that that's really super, super important. And sometimes it's multiple times a day, right? That you're having those conversations, that you need to be zipping out to the vineyard to look at something together or whatever. So I think my appreciation and respect for what Everardo and my father do, like, I mean, 2014 was sort of a blur, but it really started then. I mean, I grew up listening to my dad talk about the complexity of the vineyard and the farming and all of that. So I had an intellectual appreciation for it, but in terms of like an actual experiential appreciation for how hard it is, and how many, you know, we have 60 parcels, some of which we divide even further. So to be able to hold that complexity in your head, you know, on August 15th, when like it is on and everything's, you know, it is, nobody works harder, nobody runs more than Everardo. I mean, that is like, especially during harvest, like once the picking starts, like there is nobody who is holding the matrix in their head more intensely than Everardo. And I can't even pretend, like, to add overlay to that matrix of the vineyards of the winemaking is incredibly overwhelming and intimidating. And I came away from the 2019 harvest with just like, I know nothing. But I will say, you know, the one through line that I'm seeing, the one pattern that I'm seeing in the 2019 wines is that the vineyard, you know, the best wines in the cellar come from the best parts of the vineyard. No surprise, right? I mean, we made some good wines from the sort of mid-tier blocks, but everything that I taste that I'm like, wow, like we made good wine this year. No, the vineyard made great wine this year. And like, you can see that through line. And so I find that very reassuring, because it means that my job, you know, is not as important. So, you know, I can really let the vineyard, you know, do its thing. And but it's pretty interesting.
Can you I like when I hear winemakers say that they were growing wine rather than making grapes and then making wine. Can you talk just a little bit about that understanding of the expression of growing wine?
Well, you know, here's what I'd say.
Kind of what
I
you
think
said.
this is one of the things that we sometimes, you know, the true feedback from growing grapes is the wine. So the winery plays a very important role in being, as my father would say, a lens into the site. You know, you do X, Y, and Z in the vineyard during the year. The fruit looks the way it looks. You know, you're like, wow, it's so even, it's so balanced. Like, you know, the crop was appropriate and blah, blah, blah. Like, great, done. Right? But what's the wine taste like? You know, like, assuming the winemaker did a good job, you know, the wine can provide a feedback loop to the vineyard, which is the whole reason my father built the winery in the first place. My father was not interested in making wine. He had no ambitions to be a winemaker, but he felt that he couldn't continue to learn about the vineyard and the terroir and the farming if he didn't have the wines as a feedback. So, you know, and you know, you can be surprised both ways. You can have a vineyard that kind of looks shitty, and then the wine can be extraordinary, and then vice versa. So I think, you know, that's one of the things that we as a team really like are learning from is getting the farming crew more involved in tasting and that kind of thing, and giving them the through line to the final product. But we're not growing great. We're not in the business of growing grapes. We're in the business of making wine at the end of the day, right? So sometimes that can be you know, and that's where some of the conflict can come between growers and winemakers, especially if you're on a yield-based contract. So.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I always think of you as one of the more forward-thinking people out there that I like to follow and learn from. And when I became a wine director, that was when the pursuit of balance was happening. So it was very formative for me. Can you talk about why that came about, what it was, what it became, and then what you're doing now?
Yeah, so In Pursuit of Balance came out of conversations that Raj and I started having in 2008, which was the year I went to go work for my father. And I was
Mm-hmm.
shocked by California Pinot. I didn't like it at all. I thought as a whole that it was like, I had just come from living in New York and I'd been spoiled by drinking a lot of great Burgundy. And I said to Raj, I said, what's wrong with California Pinot Noir? And he said, even our own. And I'm talking about the Hirsch wines too. I found them to be overly ripe and not have that tension and energy that you look for in great red Burgundy. And so Raj was like, well, hang on a second, taste Literai, which of course I'd had, but not like tasted systematically. Taste a Bon Climat, taste Calera. And Raj was starting to make wine in '08. And so we just started having these conversations around then. And it was really Raj who was like, we should get all these people in a room together. Like all these young, the younger guys and the guys that have been doing it for a long time. And, and the gals too, had a bunch of women winemakers in the group too. And so in 2011, we literally wrote names on the back of a napkin at RN74 in San Francisco and invited them all and threw an event. And after that, it became more formalized because people loved it and hated it. And we felt like, okay, if we're going to continue to do this, it needs to have more structure and be fair. We really wanted it to be fair. So for all the wineries who wanted to join. So yeah, that's how it got started. And, I think it was really important in terms of, kind of carving out a place for this different style of California Pinot Noir within the marketplace. And I also just should say, I said this style of California Pinot. I mean, within the IPOB group, there was such an incredible diversity of styles. I mean, you look at Jamie Kutch's wines, like extraordinary, tons of whole cluster, really savory. And then you look at somebody like Calera, Josh's wines were always riper, but had this incredible age-worthy quality and Burgundian quality. And then everything in between, right? So there was, but it was this really, it's so funny because I hear from our old members every now and then, like, the thing that we all miss the most is, hanging out together and having that excuse to gather and talk and share ideas and taste each other's wines. Cause, there's no chance for us to do that anymore now that IPOB is gone, but it was so much work and we had to, we felt the conversation had, everybody understood the conversation and we didn't think we needed to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it wrapped up so nicely because you were very good at expressing that, which I thought was really cool. It's kind of like, don't just beat it like a dead horse. It's just like, okay, we made our point and now we can go back to our jobs.
Yeah. So Raj said it perfectly. I mean, he's like, it was never intended to be it was not intended to be a marketing event. In truth, it never was. I mean, it was so funny that like one of the criticisms that like, I think it was Laube threw at us was like, oh, it's a marketing event. I'm like, well, first of all, what's wrong with that? We're all in the business of selling wine. And you work for a magazine that markets wines and lives off advertising. It seemed like such a funny criticism. But in seriousness, I will say that it wasn't intended to be a marketing event. It really was intended to be a place for a conversation to start. And so, but it was never intended to be this like ongoing, wines of, Oregon forever or something. It wasn't supposed to be something like that. So, yeah.
But as a somm, it was really fun to come to those because we could see you all's connection. We were learning a lot. You're like, there's something going on here, and it was an opportunity to experience all that. So I thank you from us. It was very cool to do.
Thank you for attending.
Can you? Yeah, it was great. Can you explain, as a sommelier, when you go to a table, sometimes you only have 30 seconds to explain a region or something. Can you give a 30-second? I mean, take a couple minutes, but explain Sonoma to people.
Sonoma?
People that there's a lot of people who are not wine business. Just in general, what's special about Sonoma, and then what's different within Sonoma? 30 seconds.
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing about Sonoma County is its diversity. So this doesn't make it easier tableside, but there are more soil types in Sonoma County than there are in all of France. And so Sonoma County offers something for everybody. I mean, we have so much diversity with soils, climate, grape varieties. I really don't think that you can pigeonhole it. But what I would say about Sonoma and Napa is that in general, these are regions with exceptional growing conditions. We tend to have, mostly good vintages. Even, out here on the coast, it's harder. But, I think Sonoma's tough because it's so big and so diverse. And so putting it into you know, but it's ideal growing conditions, so that you can kind of grow whatever you want here. You just find the right spot within Sonoma County. So
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, I don't have
And
a good answer for that one.
No, that's a valid answer though. It's so often you get these conversations that it's a half-hour conversation and you really only have 30 seconds. So I like to just ask people those kind of things. So then what does Hirsch do or how is Hirsch different or unique within all of that?
So in respect of the wines, what I would say is, you know, we have the opportunity to make pretty intensely concentrated, flavorful wines at Hirsch that still have balance in terms of natural acidity and alcohol and have incredible structure. I mean, our wines, we struggle sometimes a little bit with the tannins. Like our wines are tannic for relatively speaking for California Pinot Noir, but I think that that's awesome. I mean, we can provide, you know, California fruit, that kind of experience of California sunshine without the California heat and with backbone. So, you know, it's a rare opportunity to make wines that are flavorful, ripe, complex, and yet have structure and balance.
Yeah, and I fully agree. They're some of my favorites. What's happening in the vineyard right now? Because you guys are kind of ahead of most people that I've talked to. What's going on with the vines right now?
So it's been a very weird first 4 months of the year from a viticultural perspective. I mean, also from an everything perspective. But
I mean, there's a snowstorm coming to New England, apparently.
It's so weird, right? I mean, but I meant more like just everything that's going on in the world. So right now the shoots are, you know, there's a lot of variability depending on what part of the vineyard you're in, vine age, how cold it is, and so on and so forth. But shoots are, you know, probably between 4 inches and 8 inches on average throughout the vineyard. So right now we're just in shoot growth, really. And in terms of vineyard work, the only thing that we're really doing right now is kind of clearing, suckering the heads of the vine. We're not even really removing doubles yet. We want to see how, you know, which would mean if you've got 2 shoots where you only want 1, we're not even removing the second one quite yet. We want to wait a little bit longer and see. I mean, we have a lot of problems with fruit set here being on the coast. So we want to be a little conservative. As my dad says, you can take it off, but you can't put it back on. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at. We're not super busy in the vineyards quite yet. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we've had a lot of, we're in a heat wave right now, which is good. It's really sunny. The vines are not chloritic. They're often chloritic, which basically means that, it's so funny. I don't know if you can see out the back window, but the vineyard right behind me, that the vineyards are often at this time of year very yellow because it's overcast often at this time of year. And so they can't carry out photosynthesis and produce chlorophyll. So they become chloritic. But we don't really have that this year, it's not as bad as it normally is this year because it's been quite sunny recently.
Are you able to turn the camera around and take us out there?
I can't go outside, but well, let me see.
Okay.
Let me try. We might lose hold on one second. The camera might flip sideways, but
oh, I see.
Let's see. Can you see behind me the vineyard?
Yeah. Wow, what a beautiful day.
So that tree right there, that's block 8. And then, yeah, so that's the vineyard behind me. One of the vineyards. Sorry, that's at the top of my head. Yeah, and then that's kind of the landscape here. Yeah, this is off my back porch. So.
That's incredible. How lucky are you?
Oh, wow. You know, I have to say, Jeff, I feel really bad for all my friends and everyone around the world who's stuck in tiny apartments. I mean, gosh, you talk to people who are quarantining in Hong Kong in their apartments, you know, talk to my importer there. It's
tiny apartments.
We are very lucky. We are very, very lucky.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So what is,
you know, it's funny. I will say, like, we live out in the middle of nowhere. And I was talking to we have one neighbor that's not, well, a lot of my colleagues live here. So I have employees who are neighbors, but our one neighbor here are the Hellenthal family. I was talking to Elisa Hellenthal and she was saying how she feels guilty that, you know, she's got so much space and blah, blah, blah. I said, Elisa, we pay the price to live here. I mean, it is an incredibly challenging place to live. You basically need to do everything yourself. You know, you can't get like a repair guy up here very easily. So it's, you know, it's a difficult place to live. We manage all of our own water, you know, we're the last place to get fixed on the PG&E line when there's power. And so, you know, power problems. So, you know, we
There's a
are very
price.
lucky
There's a
to live
price
here.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's a price for it. Yeah, and
Mm.
we and really our dads have worked incredibly hard to carve this place out. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
the work is
So
front loaded.
what?
The work was front loaded to prepare for the
Yeah.
40 years of carving this place out of the wilderness to prepare for the COVID quarantine. So.
Oh man. So I know this is different now that this is your first year being the winemaker, but in general, what would you be doing this time of year, and how is that different under Corona? And then because you're out in the country, people are spread out, but how is life under the quarantine different for you guys?
So I should be in Japan right now, I think, or like
Oh,
leaving for
okay.
Japan on Friday. I mean, I basically travel at this time of year. So,
Yeah.
I still manage all of our export markets, and I manage California and New York from a sales perspective. And then my colleague Toby Oshiro manages the rest of the country and all of Canada.
Okay.
So he travels all the time, but I basically can't travel in the summer and fall on account of harvest. So I put all my travel basically between like January to June, I travel.
Wow.
We do blending trials and we bottle wine. That's January through June for me basically. So
Mm-hmm.
I should have been on the road basically constantly since this all started. So or doing what I am still doing, which is the blending and getting ready for bottling.
Yeah.
So the only way that we can really, we're selling a little bit of wine wholesale right now. Some of our distributors are able to move a little product for us, but we're mostly selling wine through our mailing list. So I've been very focused on that part
You
of
are.
our business.
Okay.
Yeah, helping my colleague who runs that part of our business as much as I can. And then it's just been like one, little fire after another, and everything, like just to move 5 cases of wine these days is so effortful. So like everything's just taking so much time. It was, talking about it with a friend that like we should be less busy because we're doing less business and we're not traveling. But I feel, so insanely busy right now. And I think it's just because everything is more effortful. And then in terms of what's changed for our business, I mean, the loss of 50% of our revenue would be the big one. 50% of our sales are basically, wholesale, and most of that's restaurants. So, adapting to that, and, we're constantly, we immediately redid all of our financial projections when this started, but then, everything's changing week to week. So we're constantly redoing those. But yeah, that's probably the biggest one. I mean, wineries are big places and people don't work side by side, like super, super close together for most of the work. So we've been able to get the winery work done with social distancing.
Okay.
We're considered an essential business, which is an extraordinary thing that, I mean, we are so lucky that we're still able to sell, even if, we lost so much of our business. I don't want to diminish the privilege of that. I mean, that is a huge privilege that we can still sell and ship wine.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's like, it's like, I think probably how maybe a lot of people feel. It's like it feels unreal and totally normal at the same time,
Yeah, that's very well put, actually, because it's what like
It's
all the
too
time.
big.
I'm like,
It's
what's
too
going
big
on?
for us to understand. To really I think
Yeah.
it's going to take a long time for us as individuals to really
Oh, for sure.
absorb
Yeah.
and we don't even know the full effects of what's happening right now, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I will let you go because I'm kind of at the half-hour mark and I don't want to take too long. But that's part of the reason of this project, is to talk to people around the world and get some virtual sunshine like you just showed us. And then it's very optimistic. A friend of mine said the vines don't stop. You guys have to keep getting out there and pruning and trellising, and there's an optimism to that. And I think it's nice to share that.
Who was it that said this? The vines don't know about the coronavirus, and that's for better and for worse too. I mean, you might be looking at your sales and saying, "Oh, maybe I should make less wine this year," but the grapes, they're going to make what they're going to make. So it's like we don't know.
Exactly.
That is a business challenge. But I will tell you that when you walk outside and you see Mother Nature continuing on her path,
Exactly.
then it does fill me with hope. And there are things that are bigger than humanity, and that doesn't diminish the suffering that people are experiencing right now, not just from the virus, but from all the effects of it. And I don't mean to diminish that at all, but I mean, the universe abides. And, you know, I think also like connecting with nature right now is I think it's really important for all of us to do that as much as we can, even in cities and all that kind of thing. And I hope that one thing that might come out of this is that we'll be more grateful for nature, and we'll take better care of this planet, you know? So
I hope so. Well, thank you. That's like kind of a nice way to end, because I think it's a good sentiment, and it's really nice to chat with you and spend some time together. Hope to see you in person sooner rather than later. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, and you take care and good luck, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon, Jeff. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks, Jasmine.